In the eastern corner of a very old empire, there is a garden where the plum trees grow so still they seem to be listening. Stone lanterns line the paths like patient monks. The lotus pools reflect not just the sky but something deeper, a kind of silence that has its own color. Pale and blue like the inside of a shell. It is late summer and the air smells of warm earth and jasmine, and in this garden, if you are quiet enough, you can hear two songs. One comes from a golden cage on the emperor's terrace. The other comes from everywhere. The porcelain bird sits on its ivory perch, gleaming in the afternoon light. Its feathers are painted sapphire and silver, its eyes are two drops of black glass. When a tiny key in its breast is wound, it opens its beak and releases a song so precise, so perfectly measured, that every note falls like a bead onto a silk thread. The courtiers applaud, the emperor smiles and closes his eyes. But the porcelain bird does not know it is singing. It knows only the turning of small gears, the release of stored air through a copper throat. It has never once chosen a note, it has never faltered or surprised itself with feeling. And though it does not understand longing, not yet, there is something almost like a question resting deep inside its painted chest. In the one place the craftsman's brush could not reach. For a long time, the living nightingale has perched in the garden's oldest maple, singing at dusk wild, trembling songs full of rain and loneliness and sudden joy. But the emperor, charmed by the porcelain bird's flawless performance, stops sending for the nightingale. The courtiers forget her plain brown feathers. One morning, without ceremony or farewell, the nightingale flies away over the western wall. That same evening the key is wound, the porcelain bird opens its beak, and something catches. A spring slips, the song stutters, loops once and stops. The silence that follows is enormous, the emperor taps the cage. The courtiers peer inside. But the porcelain bird only sits there, its beak open to nothing. And the garden beyond the terrace feels suddenly, impossibly empty. Days pass. The emperor, disappointed, has the broken bird moved to a far corner of the garden, beside a mossy wall where the rain drips through the ivy. And here, alone for the first time, the porcelain bird begins to hear. It hears autumn arrive not all at once but leaf by leaf, each one releasing a small, papery whisper as it lets go of its branch. It hears rain tapping the lily pads in the lower pond, every drop a slightly different pitch, none of them repeating. It hears the wind moving through the bamboo grove, and the sound is so alive, so full of breath that something inside the porcelain bird trembles, not a gear. Not a spring, but the trembling of recognition. Winter comes. Snow silences the garden, and the bird sits beneath its white blanket and listens to the deepest sound of all, the quiet. It is not empty. It hums with sleeping roots and frozen water and the far-off calls of swans crossing the gray sky. The porcelain bird holds all of this inside its small body. And though it cannot feel warmth, it begins to understand what warmth is because it knows its absence. One morning in early spring, when the first crocuses push through the dark soil, something extraordinary happens. The porcelain bird opens its beak, not because a key has turned, but because it must. And from its copper throat comes a sound no craftsman ever intended. It is thin. It wavers. It is the echo of rain on stone, the memory of wind in bamboo, the ghost of a swan's call carried over snow. It is not a perfect song. It is a broken, beautiful whisper, the sound of a small thing that has listened so long and so deeply that listening itself has become music. The notes drift through the garden like the first light of day, fragile and uncertain. And they reach the ears of someone perched just beyond the western wall. The nightingale returns. She lands on the mossy wall beside the porcelain bird, tilts her plain brown head, and listens to its small, imperfect chime. Then she opens her throat and answers, and her living song pours into the garden like spring water filling a dry stream. Rich and wild and full of everything the world has ever felt. The two songs twine together in the morning air, one fragile and one fierce, one made of memory and one made of heart. The emperor, waking to the sound, steps onto his terrace and weeps without knowing why. From that day forward, the porcelain bird remains beside the mossy wall, and the nightingale never leaves again. And if you visit that garden in the blue hour before dawn, you can still hear them, one singing from a living throat, and one chiming softly from a body that learned, through silence and seasons, that the truest song is not the one played without flaw, but the one offered with everything you have.